Welcome to this deep dive for StockExplorers. Today we're really focusing in on Greenwich Life Sciences. They're a biopharma company doing some interesting things in immunotherapy.
It's right.
And what's really got people talking, and we want to unpack for you, as a potential investor, is the recent news around their main candidate, GLSI-100.
Hmm.
Specifically, this positive immune response data from the Flamingo-01 phase 3 clinical trial. We're here to sort of break down what this could actually mean for the company and, well, for your investment thinking.
Exactly. This positive immune response data, it really gives us a compelling look into what GLSI 100 might be capable of. Our goal today is to go beyond just the headlines.
Right.
We want to give you a clear handle on the science behind it, why these early results matter, and what the implications might be for Greenwich Life Sciences and the, well, pretty crowded breast cancer treatment field. We'll break down the key stuff, use some examples, hopefully make it clear why investors might be interested.
Okay, so let's dive right in. The core tech. GP2 immunotherapy, GLSI 100. So this therapy, its goal is stopping HER2 positive breast cancer from coming back after surgery.
Correct.
And for investors, recurrence is, well, it's a huge issue. Impacts patients, impacts how successful treatments are long term. So a therapy aiming right at prevention that's hitting a critical need.
And what's really interesting is how GLSI 100 targets the cancer. The key ingredient is this GP2 peptide. It's actually derived from the HER2 protein itself.
Okay.
Now think of HER2 like a switch that tells cancer cells to grow. In about 15 to 20% of breast cancers, this switch is basically jammed on.
Ah, leading to aggressive growth.
Exactly. So targeting HER2 is crucial. This GP2 peptide, it acts kind of like a unique flag, a specific marker on these HER2 heavy cancer cells.
So it's not just sitting there, this peptide. It's meant to actively, get the patient's own immune system involved, like showing the body's defense team a wanted poster for any cancer cells left after surgery.
That's a great analogy.
Hmm.
The idea is to train the immune system to recognize that poster and then hunt down any remaining HER2 positive cells.
Okay.
And to really grab the immune system's attention, GLSI 100 also includes something called GM-CSF. That's granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor.
Bit of a mouthful.
It is. But think of it like fertilizer for the immune system. It specifically encourages the growth and activation of the very cells we want fighting the cancer, sort of boosting the signal from that GP2 peptide, like adding fuel to the immune fire.
And the specific soldiers they want to activate are the CD8 plus T cells, the killer T cells.
Those are the ones, the body's assassins, basically, trained to recognize and directly destroy cells showing that GP2 flag.
Okay.
And this active stimulation, this training of the immune system, that's really what makes GLSI 100 different from some of the big players already out there for HER2 positive breast cancer, like Herceptin and Kinsella. Understanding these differences is pretty key for investors.
Right. Herceptin, trastuzumab, that's a major treatment. How's GLSI 100 different? For someone thinking about investing, what's the distinction?
Well, Herceptin mainly works by blocking that HER2 signaling pathway on the cancer cell surface. Imagine HER2 is a lock promoting growth. Herceptin jams that lock.
Got it. Stops the growth signal.
Right. And it can also flag the cancer cells for destruction by other immune cells through a process called ADCC. So the immune system's involved, but Herceptin's main job is interfering directly with the HER2 receptor itself.
Okay, that's a clear difference. And then there's Kadcyla, trastuzumab emtansine. How does that fit in, competitively speaking, for an investor looking at Greenwich?
Kinsella is basically Herceptin attached to a really potent chemo drug. Think of it like a guided missile.
Targeted delivery.
Exactly. The Herceptin part targets the HER2 cells, and once it docks, it delivers the toxic chemo payload right inside the cell, kills it from within. Very effective, but, it can also bring chemo-related side effects.
So just to recap for listeners thinking investment, Herceptin blocks signals, uses the immune system a bit indirectly. Kadcyla is like targeted chemo. Where does GLSI 100, this GP2 immunotherapy, find its own space?
The fundamental difference is GLSI 100's goal. It's trying to create a long-lasting immune memory. It's not about constantly blocking something or delivering a toxin.
Right.
It's about educating the patient's immune system to recognize and wipe out any future HER2 positive cancer cells that might pop up. That offers the potential for durable long-term protection. That's a big deal for investors.
And what about safety? For a preventative treatment, safety's got to be top of mind for patients and the investment case.
Well, the data we have so far suggests GLSI 100 has a potentially good safety profile. It's especially, compared to the chemo side effects you might see with Kadcyla. A well-tolerated preventative therapy. That could mean better patient adherence, wider use, obviously attractive from an investment angle.
Sounds promising in concept, but as investors know, it all comes down to the clinical trial data. So let's get into those phase I buy results. What were the key takeaways for someone weighing an investment in Greenwich Life Sciences?
Okay, so the phase I trial, it focused on a specific group, patients who were HLA-A02 positive, and their tumors had high levels of HR2. They call HER2-neo3 plus I.
HLA-A02, remind us what that is.
Think of it like a specific type of display window on your cells. GLSI-100 works best when it can present that GP2 peptide on this specific window so the T cells can see it clearly.
Okay.
And what was really striking was, over 5 years of follow-up, the patients who got the full GLSI-100 series had a huge reduction, 80% or even more, in the risk of their cancer coming back somewhere else, metastasizing, compared to the placebo group, which in that trial was just the GM-CSF alone.
Wow, 80% reduction in metastatic recurrence over 5 years. I mean, putting that in context, even with current treatments, recurrence is still a real concern for many patients. An 80% cut, if they can replicate that in phase 3, that could be huge. Could position GLSI-100 right at the front line for prevention, grab a big piece of that multi-billion-dollar HER2 market. That definitely gets an investor's attention.
Absolutely. And the phase I also showed the peak immune response happened around 6 months after starting the shots. And crucially, it backed up that promising safety profile we mentioned. These results, they really gave the green light, the confidence, to move into the big phase 3 trial, Flamingo-01.
Which brings us right up to date. Flamingo-01, the pivotal phase 3. Can you walk us through the design? Why is this trial so critical for GLSI-100's future and, for investors?
Right. Flamingo-01 is designed to confirm those exciting phase I results, but in a much larger group of patients. It starts with an initial series, 6 monthly shots of GLSI-100, then booster shots every 6 months for another 2.5 years. And importantly, the trial includes both HLA-A02 positive patients, they're randomized, get either GLSI-100 or a placebo, and a separate group of patients who are not HLA-A02 positive. They all get GLSI-100 in what's called an open-label arm.
And the main goal, what are they measuring? The primary endpoint?
The primary endpoint is invasive disease-free survival, IDFS. Basically, how long patients live without their cancer coming back in an invasive way. It's kind of the gold standard for judging preventative cancer therapies.
Makes sense.
They're also tracking other things like distant disease-free survival cancer coming back elsewhere, and of course, overall survival.
I heard there's also an interim analysis planned. What's the significance of that for investors wanting to see progress?
Yeah, that's important. There's a planned look at the data after a specific number of recurrences happen, 14 events in this case. If the data at that point looks really strongly positive for GLSI-100, well, it could potentially lead to applying for regulatory approval early.
Ah, so it could really speed up the timeline to market.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a huge factor for investors.
And scale-wise, how many patients are we talking about and where?
They're aiming for about 750 patients across different sites in the U.S. and Europe. This global reach helps get a diverse patient group and supports potential approval applications in multiple big markets later on.
You've mentioned that HLA-A02 status a few times. Just remind us why that genetic marker is so central to this trial's design.
So the main analysis of whether GLSI-100 works, the primary efficacy analysis, will focus on that HLA-A02 positive group. That's because the phase I results were strongest there.
Right, proving it works where they expect it to work best.
Exactly. Having that randomized placebo-controlled group allows them to rigorously confirm the earlier findings. But including the non-HLA-A02 group is also key. It lets them explore if GLSI-100 might help a wider range of patients too, which could seriously expand the potential market down the line.
Okay, now let's get to the news that sparked this deep dive. The positive immune response data from Flamingo-01. What does this early data actually tell us?
Well, this is preliminary data. It's open label, but it's definitely encouraging. What it shows is that patients in both the HLA-A02 group and the non-HLA-A02 group are showing immune responses. And these responses look consistent with what they saw back in phase I.
How are they seeing these responses?
They're tracking things like injection site reactions, redness, swelling, and also positive results on what's called a GP2 DTH skin test, delayed type hypersensitivity. And they're seeing an increasing trend, more patients showing these signs over time.
So for an investor, these are like tangible signs the therapy is actually doing its job, kicking the immune system into gear.
Precisely. And what's also interesting is they're seeing a baseline immune response level in both HLA groups, again, just like in phase IVA. These consistent trends across different trials, across different patient groups, it definitely builds confidence that GLSI 100 can reliably stimulate the immune system.
You mentioned investors should watch the data around the 4th to 6th month mark. Why that time frame specifically?
Because the phase I trial suggested the peak immune response hit around 6 months. So watching how often and how strong these immune markers, injection site reactions, DTH tests are appearing in Flamingo 01 around that time, it could give early clues about whether the therapy is on track to actually prevent recurrence, like it did before.
Got it. So for investors watching this stock, these immune response markers are really key indicators to track. Can you just quickly recap what biomarkers they're measuring in Flamingo 01?
The main ones are those local injection site reactions
Yeah.
and the GP2 DTH skin tests. If you see more patients getting these reactions in the groups receiving GLSI 100, it suggests their immune systems are waking up to the GP2 peptide.
And how did phase I connect these early signs to the actual benefit, the prevention of recurrence?
Yeah, that's crucial. Phase I showed a correlation. Basically, the stronger the immune response generated by GLSI 100, the bigger the reduction in metastatic recurrence they saw. Patients with a more robust immune reaction seem to have a much lower risk of their cancer coming back. It's that link early immune response, potentially predicting long-term clinical benefit, that makes this initial Flamingo 01 data so interesting for investors.
Which naturally leads to the regulatory side. How might this positive immune data influence GLSI 100's path to getting approved?
Well, positive consistent immune response data could be quite persuasive when talking to regulatory bodies like the FDA or EMA, especially for immunotherapies. If the data shows a strong, sustained immune response, and it looks like it's correlating with a good trend in disease-free survival, it could potentially open doors to faster review pathways, maybe even conditional approvals.
And the fact they're seeing responses in both HLA groups.
That's also significant. It could support a broader potential approval down the road, not just limited to the HLA-A02 positive patients.
Okay, let's pivot to the market opportunity. Assuming GLSI 100 makes it through, how big is the potential market and how does it stack up against existing treatments from an investment perspective?
The market for preventing HER2 positive breast cancer recurrence in places like the US and Europe is huge. We're talking billions of dollars annually.
Billions, yeah.
And now, with patent claims potentially covering non-HLA-A02 patients as well, the addressable market could expand significantly. If you look at how current HER2 therapies are priced, yeah, the estimate is a multi-billion-dollar annual opportunity.
And how would GLSI 100, with its unique approach, compete in that already established market?
Its edge really lies in that different mechanism actively training the patient's own immune system for, hopefully, a long-lasting preventative effect. That strong efficacy signal from phase I, plus the potentially good safety profile, it positions it as a potentially compelling alternative, or maybe even something used alongside existing therapies.
Right.
And the fact that it's demonstrated it can activate the immune system, that definitely boosts its standing in the hot field of cancer immunotherapy. Plus, its specific focus on preventing recurrence after surgery targets a really critical unmet need.
Makes sense. So what are the absolute key milestones investors need to keep their eyes on? And what about the financial side of things?
The big ones, no question, are that interim analysis and then the final efficacy data from Flamingo 011. Those results will be make or break for the drug, heavily influencing regulators, and, of course, investor confidence.
And practically speaking,
Practically, you also need to watch their manufacturing scale-up efforts. They need to be ready to produce the drug commercially if it gets approved. The positive immune data we're seeing could maybe help the perceived timeline for approval. Financially, yeah, they've been raising money through private placements to fund these big trials. Investors definitely need to look at their latest financials, cash on hand, burn rate, how long the funding lasts. Phase 3 trials are expensive.
and keep watching for more data readouts, regulatory feedback.
Exactly. Any updates there, pipeline developments, those are all potential catalysts.
It also seems like collaborations are pretty important for getting this trial done.
Oh, definitely. Greenwich Life Sciences has teamed up with major clinical networks and research institutions in the U.S. and Europe. Think U.S. Oncology, JICAM, Harvard, Johns Hopkins. These partnerships give them access to more patients, leverage existing expertise, adds credibility, helps efficiency. Adding new sites in Europe, like Poland and Germany, should help speed up enrollment, too.
So looking at the longer term, what are some potential risks investors should be aware of, and what might be next for Greenwich beyond Flamingo 01?
Well, like any biotech in development, there are always risks. Phase 3 needs to definitively confirm those phase I results in this larger, more diverse group. That's the big hurdle.
Even with the positive early signs.
Even with positive signs, the bar is high. Including both HLA types is smart, helps address patient differences, but the final efficacy data is what counts. Looking beyond breast cancer, the company has hinted they might explore GLSI-100 and other cancers that express HR2, or maybe in combination with other drugs. But honestly, the phase 3 outcome and what regulators say next, that's going to have a profound impact on the company's valuation and its ability to fund anything else.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive for our Stock Explorers listeners, Greenwich Life Sciences has an innovative immunotherapy approach aimed at preventing HER2 positive breast cancer recurrence. The recent positive immune response signals from their key phase 3 trial, Flamingo-01, are definitely encouraging. They seem to line up with the strong results from their earlier phase IB study. The potential for GLSI-100 to offer a different, possibly long-lasting way to fight this disease by harnessing the patient's own immune system. Well, it makes it a compelling story for potential investors to keep tracking.
Absolutely. That focus on generating a sustained T-cell response, the potential for a good safety profile, and the very real need to prevent recurrence. It all adds up to why Greenwich Life Sciences could be significant. The ongoing Flamingo-01 trial, especially those upcoming data readouts, will be absolutely critical in seeing if this potential becomes reality.
Well, that wraps up our detailed exploration for today. If you found this helpful for your own investment research, please do subscribe to Stock Explorers, give us a like, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future deep dives. And here's something for you to think about. Given the encouraging immune response data, but knowing the phase 3 efficacy results are still pending, what specific data points or comparisons within those final results would give you the confidence needed to potentially invest in Greenwich Life Sciences? Mull that over as you do your own homework.